Welcome to yet another exciting edition of Sports Talk here on Atlantic Television Network. On this edition of the program, 2 Nigerian athletes qualified for Paris Olympic Games. From the world of tennis, Novak Djokovic breaks into the semi-finals at the US Open. From football, CAF names referee for Nigeria's Sao Tome clash. Details of these and many more will be yours when we return from the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Sports Talk here on the Atlantic Television Network. On this edition of the program, here with me, award-winning Sarah Davis. Nice to have you, Sarah.
Good morning, Cyril.
Well, let's get started. And as usual, we'll start from the local scene here, where former 100 meters hurdles champion Toby Amoson and 400 meters hurdler Ezekiel Nathaniel have secured their spots at next year's Olympic Games in Paris, France. This is Sharon. These are the first Nigerians to make up Team Nigeria for the Olympic Games next year.
Well, we talked about, her poor performance at the World Championship. And, of course, no thanks to the distractions, that greeted her ahead of the World Championship. And this time around, like I said, before she had that clearance from the Athletics Integrity Unit that she was cleared of, the doping charges, leveled against her. We felt that, we needed, a certain Toby Amoson at the Athletics Championship. And, of course, we needed her at the All-African Games and, of course, at the Olympics proper. And the good news is that, she's made it to the Olympic proper. Apart from Toby Amoson and, of course, Nathaniel, I also do think that Ese Boomer has also qualified, because a couple of days ago she was at the Diamond League in China, where, of course, she did fantastically well. And I'm sure she also have gained, a ticket to be at the Paris Olympics.
Talking about qualification for the Olympic Games next year, Toby Amoson qualified courtesy of a 12.52 seconds jump, a long, just a hurdles jump run over. You remember she had a 12.12 as a world record, but she took that up to about 12.34 at the last Diamond League before the Athletics Championship. But here, a few days ago at the Stockholm Diamond League event, she's been able to put up a qualifying time of 12.52, which is better, than the entry of 12.77.
Well, at the time when, she recorded that, feat at the Diamond League before the World Athletic Championship, of the fact that I wasn't really, crazy about the fact that, she made that. And we have to look at, the opponents that she competed against. Some of the big names were not there. But so I'm not looking at, what's the second she has done. But then, just looking forward to see that, she keeps, improving her performances from the All-African Games and then to the Paris Olympics.
Tobias Musso and, of course, Nathaniel already at Paris 2024. I can show you that more Nigerians should be able to qualify for the Olympic Games coming up next year. So we hope that the Athletics Federation of Nigeria and, of course, the entire body of athletics in Nigeria will continue to prepare for the Olympic Games next year. Olympic Games are quite a big...
Talking about preparation, we all know what played out, even the president of the Athletics Federation, AFN, here in Nigeria, came out saying that, they had issues of the finances and all of that. And you talked about preparation. We have never prepared, we've never had adequate preparations. Our athletes have just been, doing well based on personal preparations and that never say die, attitude of a typical Nigeria. Most times, even when we get, some level of good preparation, it comes, towards, very close to the competition proper. So we just hope that, lessons have been learned from the just concluded African Athletics Championship in Budapest. And we hope that, they get things right, start very early. Okowa said something, the president of Athletics Federation, he said, they didn't have the funds and all of that. And so we hope that now that we have a new minister, he will definitely hit the ground running. We've seen ministers come, yes, we hope he does well, given, his track record. But we've seen ministers, come in, they travel from one, venue, like from Abuja to Lagos, Lagos to Ibadan, trying to see, study tours, and then they make one or two, a policy statement, and before you know it, they just go back. So we hope that this minister will be able to change the wrongs, rewrite the wrongs, and then we get better preparation ahead of the All-African Games, built for Ghana, and then the Paris Olympics.
Newly appointed sports minister here in Nigeria should be up to it in terms of ensuring that the athletes prepare well and for a major championship or event, sporting event like the Olympics. There will be no excuse if we don't do well at the Olympics. Meanwhile, let's get to the local scene proper. Here in Rivers State, there has been a 50 million naira just a largest for members of the just a Victorious Queens handball team. We've seen a situation where, apart from football, in the other sports, they are often one or two accolades, but no financial, boost to help. But in this instance, we've seen the governor of Rivers State, Similayo Fubara, dollar 50 million for a non-football team. This is a handball team. Yes, they made it proud, but we've seen in the past where if you're not a football side, you don't really get financial
and to some level of basketball.
To some level. But now we are seeing it in handball. It looks like a very good development because...
Well, for me, I think it's a new dawn when, athletes are being rewarded. And for me, I think, this particular trophy means a lot to the new governor of Rivers State. It is the first, trophy he's getting from sport. And I think that's one of the more reasons, he has given the support. But then he charged the Commissioner for Sport, Christopher Green, to ensure that every other sport is given, adequate attention. And of course, they complained about, when they were being hosted, they complained about, facilities, and they complained about some of the athletes, who are elsewhere in the north, and they're trying to, do well for the north and all of that. And the commissioner promised them that he will do everything to ensure that those athletes, come back to represent Nigeria. And one other thing, the commissioner said that really thrilled me. He said they were really going to give attention to indigenous athletes. They are going to get, elite athletes, foreign elite athletes who will come in and then train these indigenous athletes for the long run. I think it's a welcome development. And for what he said, that the governor had charged him that he has to ensure that every other sport is given adequate attention. And he said something about, before the end of the year, having a state sports festival. So we're looking forward to, better days in sports here in Rivers State.
Mr. Christopher Green, very experienced sports administrator, should know how to ensure that the best of potentials are being tapped around across the state in all sports and not just football, which has been a common occurrence in the past. We hope that with the way the governor is rewarding other sports as well, I'm sure the athletes themselves, in the other sports apart from football, will begin to see how they can get from all that's in store coming from the River State Governor, Similaye Fubara. Meanwhile, let's see what's happening in the world of martial arts this morning. Preparations, we are told, have reached advanced stage ahead of the first ever Guinness World Record event. What do we get from here? We've seen some kind of improvement from, like I've mentioned before, both internationally and nationally, where emphasis is really more on the other lesser-known sports. This is martial arts, and we are told that a martial arts event, is big enough in the city of Port Harcourt to attract the Guinness World Record. Well,
it's the first time, we're going to be having this in Nigeria, not just, in Port Harcourt. The first time we're going to have this kind of, championship in martial arts in Nigeria. So I think, it's a welcome development. The organizer, Angel Delafi, as popularly known as Angel Delafi, said something, he's a taekwondo athlete. I remember over the years, I've had interviews with him.
I've known that a comedian of top class, like,
he has represented Nigeria at the All-African Games. He was one-time taekwondo championship. He spent most of he grew up in the north, in Niger State to be precise, and he won the IBB taekwondo, championship in one of the years. He's gone to the African Universities Games and all of that. He knows a lot about, taekwondo and martial art, and he's the one driving all of this. And he says, it's going to be massive. I remember 2 weeks ago, they were at the Ministry of Sports when they had to go, tell the commissioner of their intention to carry out, this particular event and all of that. So we're just, looking forward to that. But then, one thing that baffles me about this particular championship is the fact that they said, attempting to cut off an object in the head of a human. I hope it doesn't mistakenly turn to something else anyway.
Well, I'm looking forward to this one. When exactly is this event taking place?
Yeah, it's actually taking place on Friday. It's set somewhere around the Waterline Junction.
Well, I'd like to be part of that event because if you've ever been part of any event organized by Angel Delaf, you know that you don't need to go see the doctor after being part of event organized by Angel Delaf. And now going into martial arts, which, like we've been told there, has been a primary area for Angel.
And don't forget, he's a black belt holder.
That's it. It doesn't come easy for you to be a black belt in the martial arts, and it means that Angel Delaf is top class, and we hope that he will bring all his organizational skills as well that we've seen in the past to this event that will attract the Guinness World Record. Meanwhile, let's go to wrestling now, where the 2022 Commonwealth Games gold medalist Lawal Foloshade Rafitu and, of course, the other athletes involved are set to depart Lagos for Saudi Arabia for a very, very strong competition where we see 4 other weightlifters getting involved in the 2023 International Weightlifting Federation Championship. This is what we've often talked about. We want to see Nigerian athletes, both in all spheres, compete at major championships to test their skills and prepare themselves for, for the biggest occasions in sports. If you don't take part in this championship, it looks very difficult for you to win, but maybe the big one like the Olympic Games. So this looks like a good preparatory ground for weightlifters in Nigeria.
Weightlifting is one of the sports that have actually brought laurels to Nigeria in the 70s and even in the 80s. And of course, even in the 90s, but then, it hasn't been so good, with us in the last, 1 decade. But then, the fact that these athletes, are going out, we sure hope that we're just keeping faith with them and believing that they will be able to don the green, white, green of Nigeria very well over there. Like, we talked about, Toby and Moso and, most of these athletes, what they are doing, most of the competition they feature in this period, it also doubles as qualification for the Paris Olympic. And we hope that weightlifting will also be able to do Nigeria proud and then pick up that ticket to the Paris Olympics.
Well, 7 weightlifters and 3 officials, they are leaving the shores of Nigeria to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for preparatory championship ahead of the Olympic Games. And like she mentioned there, weightlifting has been one event that has, one sports discipline that has brought glory.
But even at the same time, it's brought glory to us, and at the same time, brought some level of shame to us. We remember sometime when the entire contingent, to the World Championship were disqualified for doping. And just in a couple of years ago, I'm sure that was at the London Olympics or so, where one of the athletes, Amala, was, detected for doping and all of that. So we hope that this time around our athletes are going to be competing very clean and very fair, and of course picking that ticket to the Paris Olympics. Nigerian
athletes definitely has to distinguish themselves when they travel out by not bringing shame. We need honor and not shame. I'm hoping that these 7 weightlifters and the officials will conduct themselves in the best possible way out there in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, now we'll go to African Judo Championship, where we are told that Nigeria's Michael Agbo will be the country's sole representative at the forthcoming 2023 African Senior Judo Championship in Morocco. African Senior Judo Championship is scheduled to take place from the 7th to the 9th of September in Casablanca, to be specific, in Morocco. We've seen a situation where 229 competitors consisting of 131 men and 98 women from over 30 countries will be taking part in this championship. Do we have a chance with a sole representative?
Well, we've seen situations where, of course, we compete with even athletes, beyond that number you just reeled out. But like I said, concerning the weightlifting team, we just have to keep faith with this team, with these, athletes, and then just hoping that, something good comes out of it. We're Nigerians, and of course, we trust that, even though, most times, we don't have the best of preparation, but having in mind that they were going for this competition, I know too well that some of those federations would have had, the best preparation for their athletes.
African Judo Championship with Nigeria's sole representative, Agbo, we hope that he will distinguish himself and come. It's not about the number, it's about the quality. And given that he has been through a lot of training...
But the unfortunate part of it is that, most of his training tours have been within Nigeria. And sometimes, I should think that, some of those federations, haven't done aggressive marketing and having something behind, you should be able to expose some of these athletes, for training tours beyond the shores of the country. And that's way, it will also boost their psyche, going into the competition. But then, let's be positive. Let's be positive. The training tours is hard, within Nigeria might, probably, produce some positive results.
We're positive and hoping that Agbo will definitely bring glory to Nigeria at the end of the Judo Championship in Casablanca, Morocco. Let's do tennis now. And talking about tennis, the major event going on right now in the world in tennis is the US Open, and it is the last Grand Slam of the year. And top athletes, tennis athletes, are doing their very best to distinguish themselves. And one of them is a former champion, Novak Djokovic, at the US Open. He is now into the semi-final. This looks like one man who is so destined to hit it big when it comes to, especially at the US Open. He was not there last year because of COVID. Before then, he had won. The US Open looks like his familiar surface. This is his 14th win at this quarterfinal stage, at the consecutive win at the US Open. And I feel for his opponent, Taylor Fritz. This is the 8th time he has beaten him. In fact, it's been 8-0. He's never had any win over Novak Djokovic, so it looks like a routine win. But it didn't come easy after all.
Well, it's a very familiar ground. If you ask me, I want to think that it is, his terrain. Well, of course, he gets, result. But unfortunately, like you said, he wasn't there last time because of his COVID-19 vaccination status. Novak Djokovic is one man who has proven that, even at, 36 years, that he still has enough gas in the system, to go all the way. But then he has enough challengers. He has the likes of Alcaraz. I mean, Alcaraz, he's one player who knows some level of his number 6 button. I think he also has the likes of, Medvedev to also contend. There are other big boys, still around. So we hope. I'm a die-hard fan of, Novak Djokovic, and I want to see him get at least if for not in 26 Grand Slam before retirement. That way, it will be very, very difficult for anyone to get close or to even, break that record. We hope to see him, get even to the finals and then eventually win it. But then the young man Alcaraz should also be encouraged because he's a young man who is, doing everything, within himself to also see that, he remains, at the top of his game.
Straight set win by Novak Djokovic over Taylor Fritz of the United States of America, 6-1, 6-4, 6-4. And like I mentioned, it looks like a routine win over
but then I wonder why, somebody kept, beating you in a season in, season out, and you are yet to know something about the person, you are yet to know what to do to also break down the person. I feel for Taylor Fritz anyway.
Well, we feel for him, that's what it is, because he's beating him 8 times.
Maybe he's not a player for the big stage.
Well, he's beating him 8 times now. But talking about Novak Djokovic, he seems to have, better the record of Roger Federer. No other player, in modern day, that's in the Open era, that has made as many as 47 wins, at the quarterfinal stage of the US Open. So it looks like this is Novak Djokovic's house. If he has to be the US Open, then he can take anybody on and, of course, get the better. Like I said, 47 times that he's gotten to the semi-final of the US Open. We wish him the very best of luck, and let's see what happens next. But for Taylor Fritz, I'm very sure, like you mentioned, you have to go and learn something about how to, to get at...
At least sometimes you just have to give him, give him some scare. Look at what happened to him, last weekend when he had, he lost the first 2, sets. Give him some trouble so that whenever, there's a match between, Taylor Fritz and Djokovic, he also has something to fear. But as it is now, there's just no fear factor. Once it's Taylor Fritz, he knows that it's just, a stroll in the park.
Talking about fear factor there, he's had, in this match that ended yesterday, he had 51 unforced errors as compared to just 26 on the part of Novak Djokovic. Will you say that fear, has led to so many unforced errors on his part?
When you're under pressure and you're playing against an opponent, you see that, kept beating you. Season in, season out, Novak has just dropped that, that fear factor. It's still that fear factor in Taylor Fritz that whenever he's up against him, he's likely to make a lot of mistakes and all of that. And that's what, fear brings. And that's why he has to really study Novak Djokovic. If I were Taylor Fritz, I'll just go back home. Whenever Novak Djokovic is playing against any opponent, I'll put my head down and ensure that at least I know something to do to him to also bring him down. If not winning him, at least, beat him in 1, 2, 3 sets. Instill that fear back in him. Let him also have a feel of that fear he has instilled in him.
Well, Novak Djokovic has yet another American to contend with in the semi-final. Ben Shelton, he actually took out Francis Tiafoe only late hours of this morning. And so now we'll have Novak Djokovic against Ben Shelton. And talking about Shelton, this is looking like relatively, an unseeded player at the US Open coming all the way to the semi-final and coming up against the world number 2.
Well, sometimes, we talk about, form and we don't talk about, the numbers. And sometimes the number doesn't speak and it's about the form. So we'll see what plays out between the two, players.
Well, we hope that...
Upset is the name of the game.
Upset could be the name of the game, but when
it's tennis. We've seen that in most occasions.
And semi-final of the US Open with one man that...
Did we see the scare last weekend? Nobody saw it coming. He was down in the first 2 sets.
But that's what champions are made of. When they are down, they find a way to come up, and that's what Novak Djokovic did against a relatively unknown opponent. But playing the semi-final of the US Open, and when he's looking at getting that Grand Slam number 24, no man has been able to put that many. Talk of 23 Grand Slam, and now he's looking for 24.
But what the men cannot do, the women can do. Take it away from me.
Oh, well...
Margaret Court has done it.
Margaret Court has done 24 Grand Slam, and I think that's what Novak is aiming at doing now in the Open era. And talking about females, there's a relatively unknown, that's not completely unknown, but a teenager at the semi-final of the US Open. Coco Gauff, we wanted to talk about her last time, but this is an opportunity of us knowing more about Coco Gauff because she took out a very experienced former Grand Slam winner, Jelena Ostapenko, at the quarterfinals, and relatively easy results. Straight set, 6-love, 6-2. I didn't expect the 6-love against an experienced player like Jelena Ostapenko in the very first set.
Well, she's been having a fairy tale run at this particular US Open. She's been fantastic, and if there's one female player, upcoming female player, whom I think will bring about that level of consistency that Serena Williams left behind, apart from Iga Swiatek is a Coco Gauff. I mean, we saw her, after winning the U.S. Open, sometime, and then, she went and it was like, a young, a young giant, a young sleeping giant. But all of a sudden, she rejuvenated, and you can see the way she has progressed. And the last 2 Grand Slams, she has been fantastic, winning one, and of course, looking towards, winning another one. Well, I fear for whoever opponent she's going to be meeting, because her biggest opponent would have been Iga Swiatek, who is also out of the way. But then, this young lad has done so well. I remember when last, we had a teenager getting to this level. I think it was, the dead, Serena Williams from the U.S., Serena Williams and all of that. So, I mean, for me, I'm rooting for her. My head, body, soul, and spirit is with Coco Gauff.
Well, talking about Coco Gauff, the first American teenager to appear in the semi-final of the U.S. Open after like she mentioned there, Serena Williams did it about 22 years ago, I think 2021. 2001 was the first time we saw, or the last time we saw an American, Serena Williams, at the age of 19, qualify for the U.S. Open. And that's exactly what Coco Gauff has done here. 22 years after an American at the teenage age is into the semi-final of the U.S. Open. And talking about Coco Gauff, she's never won a Grand Slam before. She looks like itching very close to winning a Grand Slam now, because she just, the way she's playing, when you eliminate your opponent 6-love, 6-1, you have enough energy to contend with in the semi-final fixture.
Last month she won. This time around, we have seen a progression from the round, from the beginning to this level. And you know something, once, a player gets to be winning and winning, the psyche of the player gets, even tougher and higher. And I think, that's one thing that is driving her. Another thing I think, that has been driving her towards, getting to the finals is determination. And of course, that young, that vigor, I mean, that, enough gas in her system as a young person, also, driving her to get into this level. Let's just hope that, she gets to win the U.S. Open on home soil.
Opportunity for Coco Gauff to win. She's won 16 of her last 17 matches, and that's quite a big momentum to gather on. I bet she comes against a Czech Republic player, Karolina Muchukova. Do you see, when you talk about a tennis player from the Czech Republic, you definitely should have some respect for them, because they are very good.
Yeah, like you said, when you see, players from that part of the world, you have to give them a lot of respect. But then, I also don't think that if she's able to overcome... Yes, I am very, very sure that she probably will get to the finals and then nick it. But then, you must have to face what is in front of you first. And let's see how, she navigates things in this particular game. Yes, Coco Gauff, will be playing, with some level of respect and all of that. And I'm very sure that, her opponent will also be looking at her with a whole lot of respect, given the way she's been pushed, she's been, navigating, proceedings from the last, tournament to the U.S. Open.
Well, Coco Gauff do not have much to fear, because this is a player.
Oh, she should, because it doesn't. Yes, she's ranked 233, but she may have some level of experience more than Coco Gauff.
Well, when it comes to US
right now,
Open,
I'm sure we're looking at the form.
The last time she was at the U.S. Open, she exited in the very first round, and now she's come all the way to the semi-final. You think that will give her, some kind of aura to confront Coco Gauff that is in cruise control, so to say?
Would I say is Coco Gauff is having some level of home advantage? No, not really in tennis, but then, I don't know, but let's just see how things play out.
When you talk about Coco Gauff, you want to ask, where is Iga Swiatek? Iga Swiatek is still around.
Swiatek is out. So, that's the only player I was thinking could give her some troubles, but she's out.
There's still Arina Sabalenka.
Couldn't stand to defend her title.
Talking about Arina Sabalenka, she will definitely be the world #1 next week when the U.S. Open comes to an end.
I think she's already world #1 right now.
It will be announced next week when the rankings will be officially
announced.
But that's what it is. The long reign of Iga Swiatek has come to an end, and let's see the beginning of Arina Sabalenka's reign at the U.S. Open. But just before we get out of tennis and maybe take our very first break on the program, there's relatively high heat at Flushing Meadows, venue of the U.S. Open. We understand the heat is so much that the tennis players, especially the semi-final, the quarter-final match between Novak Djokovic and his opponent, they had to take off their shirts, and try to get some kind of ice pack, around to refresh them. So much heat by this time, and some people are thinking that the organizer should think of a maybe some other time, not at a period when the heat level in the New York
it's not the first time, they are getting to experience it. I'm sure, if I remember, if my memory serves me very well, a couple of years ago, they also had, this level of heat, during the U.S. Open. And they had to do with, the ice pack, removing their shirts and all of that. And I think, like you said, the organizers should look out, for a way where, of course, at the next, U.S. Open, they will be having it when the heat is not this much. But we've also been told that the last one event where we had, a certain Dr. Age came to, talk to us. He told us how athletes are not supposed to be competing when, the weather is very hot. So I think the organizers themselves, they have, civilized people, they do things as civilized people. They probably will come up with something, to do concerning at the time, at what time this particular U.S. Open should be open, so they don't get to be experiencing this kind of heat, because it is actually not good for the health of the athletes, the players.
Over 92 degrees Fahrenheit heat in New York, Flush Meadows to be specific, at the time quarterfinal games were played. It's really, really high, and I'm very sure that the organizers will have a rethink when it comes to the time. They had to, at the stage, even close the roof, but it wasn't not enough. The heat was just a very high.
Maybe they will have to, subsequently, they will have to also look at, building, a stadium where the roof can be closed, and then, have the ACs like we had at the Qatar, World Cup.
Well, that will be it for this half of the program. We'll definitely return back to bringing you the latest happening around the world of football. A lot is happening, I can tell you. The league gets underway this weekend and at the Adamasimba Stadium, and thereafter, this is a weekend where we understand the Super Eagles of Nigeria will be in action as well against their counterparts from Principe and Sao Tome. So much more to expect on the second half of this program. Stay with us. Welcome back. Sports Talk here on Atlantic Television Network, and the time for us to bring you latest happenings in the world of football. And talk about football, the Nigerian Premier League gets underway this weekend. We understand at the Adamasingba Stadium in Ibadan. It will be 3SC Shooting Stars of Ibadan hosting Plateau United, former champions. And that will be the only match for this weekend. The other games, we are told, because of Super Eagles encounter against their counterpart for Sao Tome and Principe. That match, the remaining 9 other fixtures will come up next weekend, not this weekend. And so, Sarah, only one game this weekend, for whatever reason it is, we are told. But again, how are the other teams preparing for eventual kickoff of the league, which has suffered twice postponement? Well,
let me ask you one question before I start. What's the reason for that particular? Is it the Community Shield or Charity Shield?
Well, I think for me, it's lack of adequate planning on the part of...
Because if you're telling us that it is the Community Shield, the curtain raiser to the commencement of the league, it is quite understandable because it is practiced everywhere. But which is not. It is one of the fixtures for the league proper. So why should we have one match this weekend and then the other matches, next weekend? We had that at the Abridged season where we had, Bendel Insurance, travel to Aqua United. That was exactly what they did. And of course, I don't know where, this idea is coming from. But for me, I think, it's not the right thing to do. If you're telling us it's the Community Shield, well understandable. But then, the fact that we have the Super Eagles game, they say it's because of the Super Eagles game. What makes them feel that if we have that particular game at the Adamasingba Stadium, and then we have the Super Eagles game at the Akwa Ibom International Stadium, who says attention will not be shifted to the Super Eagles game? Or who says attention will not be at the Adamasingba Stadium? It is the same thing. All we should have done is, yes, for the teams that are playing at the Akwa Ibom International, the Uncommon Stadium, what they should have done, we saw that last season, when Rivers United played, their continental game on a Sunday, they had to leave the teams, who used that particular stadium to play the next day. And then we had, we had 2 games, on that day. Exactly what I felt, they should have done, leaving Aqua United if they have a home game and then staying and playing the next day. But then, fortunately or unfortunately, that's what it is. For the coaches, for Fatayo Show, who left Rivers United and then moved to Aqua United, and of course for Fidelity Lechiku of Rangers, I chatted with them and they said, preparations, are around there, ready for the season. But for our own Rivers United, fortunately or unfortunately, we won't be even playing that first match because that weekend is the weekend where Rivers United will be traveling to Cote d'Ivoire in one of their first CAF Confederations Cup tie. So for Rivers United, we'll be seeing them in action in another 2 weeks and not in the next weekend. But then, they are the ones in charge of the league, and for us as sport journalists, we will keep talking until the right thing is done.
Right thing needs to be done. We talked about getting league started to align with CAF programs and the FIFA programs, and now we are already a month short of that, and I think this is not too good because we end up again, having postponement because
all of these are as a result of, the incessant postponement. I don't know why it is like that. From administration to administration, we don't ever stick to the time. Once a date is given, we're very certain. We are very. I mean, we predict our administrators very well. Once they give us a date, we know that, guys, this will not be the dates. They will definitely shift it. A second date will come, we will say they will definitely shift it. I try, giving, credit to this particular, administrators, and that's those, running the league. But then, it is not something we want to see season in, season out, when, of course, you've given us a date, and then the next thing we are, I mean, it's easy to predict that that date will not be feasible. Well,
while the dates are not feasible in terms of football calendar here in Nigeria, the teams themselves, too, are beginning to even prepare for an eventual takeoff, because we are told that Wiki Tourist now have a new manager, Abba Mohamed, is the new head coach of Wiki Tourist. Of course, Wiki Tourist do play their tribe in the lower league here in Nigeria. Let's move on quickly and see what other development we have for you in the football. But strongly, this league, a lot of people have talked about it. Why do you have to take the league, the other 9 fixtures away from the very first fixture? If the Super Eagles are playing on Sunday, it should affect only the fixture that will take place at the Godswill Akpabio Stadium, not the other 8 centers.
I just talked about it. And I feel that shouldn't have been done. That ordinarily, what they would have done is, if Aqua United are playing at home, they should have, just left, that game of Aqua United, shifted it to the next day, and then we play a match. Especially now that we are behind. We actually had, the Abridged League, which, of course, everyone, came to terms with them that it was a child of necessity, just because we want to catch up with other leagues, and that has been done. I see no reason why haven't shifted the date, haven't shifted from one day to the other and all of that, and then all of a sudden you are not telling us that the league will not even start probably because of the Super Eagles game. And I also do think that one of the reasons why we shouldn't have even bothered about this postponement is the fact that the game is even a dead rubber game, even though for pride's sake we have to play. I mean, I don't think all of these excuses for shifting our matches to the upper weekend is good enough.
Really disturbing that the matches have to go to the upper weekend. It's not like, it means that the league effectively have not started, and that's not too good on the part of the organizers of the league, especially because those who are in charge now have been around and where we're complaining about not starting with the FIFA and the
Look at the European League, like the EPL. I'm sure they are in their 5th week, and then we're yet to start. So by the time we start, they should be like in their 8th week. That's when we're starting. And what was the essence of the Average League to catch up with European leagues?
Well, it's really difficult, but that's what it is. We are yet to, getting it right here in Nigeria when it comes to kickoff dates for the league. Talking about this weekend, the Super Eagles of Nigeria, apart from the Nigerian Premier League getting started with one fixture, the Super Eagles of Nigeria have an encounter against Sao Tome and Principe. It has to do with qualifying for the Nations Cup. We have already qualified. This is like an academic game.
It's one game where I think, ordinarily, if you ask me, I do not think that, the coach of the side or the Nigerian Football Federation would have bothered, inviting foreign-based players. If we had a good Super Eagles team B, I'm sure that team should have been able to prosecute this matches. But unfortunately, not fortunately, we do not have a quality Super Eagles team B, and I'm sure that's one reason they have been able to, they have invited some foreign-based players, and of course we're going to be seeing some players, also making their debut for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. But then, I think, it's one game that we don't even need to lose. I mean, we don't need to lose sleep. It's a game that we should just have, we should, just have like, a stroll in the park. But then we must also remember that the Super Eagles, the Super Eagles of today are not the Super Eagles of yesterday, where that fear factor has been taken away. But just hoping that, staying positive and still believing that we can replicate what we did against them, this time around again.
Super Eagles of Nigeria versus Sao Tome and Principe on Sunday in you, but the Super Eagles are expected to arrive with you later this evening for the crunch encounter, so they will have some time to settle.
I don't know why you say it's a crunch encounter. Is it a draw game?
Because every game...
probably for pride's sake.
For pride's sake, that's what it is. Well, talking about that encounter between Nigeria and Sao Tome, the match officials are from Algeria. The center referee is from Algeria. And, I understand the match commissioner is from Togo as well. Top-class referee coming from Algeria.
Well, one thing I know CAF has done really well, over the years is the fact that they've always given us, top-class referees, match commissioners and the likes, But the sad part of it is that, we haven't been able to produce those, the numbers when the subject, officiating on the continent. We hope, we just believe in we get better someday.
Talking about hope, it looks like the Super Falcons players are no longer hoping. Their allowances have now been settled.
Well, we thank God,
Not 100%.
Not 100%, but at least, it shows that, there's some level of improvement in the administration. We have a new minister, and just hoping that he will be able to put his eyes down and ensure that the Nigerian Football Federation, under the leadership of Ibrahim Gozo, does the right thing. And of course, for Ibrahim Gozo, I know that he will want to do the right thing because, one, he has a new minister, he will want to impress the minister, and of course, the kind of tongue lashing that have gone out even while the girls were prosecuting the game at the World Cup is enough for them to do the right thing.
Talking about the Super Falcons and their coach, it comes to mind Randy Waldorf. He's of the opinion that he was not sacked by the Nigerian Football Federation.
Yes, he was not sacked. I don't want to agree that he was sacked. He said it long before, even before he had, the brouhaha with the Nigerian Football Federation prior to the World Cup. He said he was not going to be with Nigeria after the World Cup, so he wasn't sacked.
Talking about sacking coaches, reminds me that the World Cup winning coach for the Spanish national female side has been sacked. George Vilda, who has been with the team in the last, I think he was employed in 2015 or so, has now been sacked. How do you sack a World Cup winning coach? What are you looking for?
Well, all of these, happened because of what the FA boss in Spain is going through. We hear that he was the one who brought him and he has given him a lot of backing and all of that. And indications are very rife that is because of, what the FA boss, is going through, and that's what, is affecting the coach. Well, unfortunately, he's been sacked. Maybe they will get someone, not through Rubiales.
Talking about the FA boss in Spain, Rubiales, he's been, of course, asked by FIFA for 3 months pending investigation for what is being now termed a forceful kiss. That he believes that kiss was mutual. What do you think, Sarah?
Well, that's one story that, has been around, since the end of the World Cup. And, of course, for me, I just do think that, if you watch that video very well, the lady herself also had a hand on him. But right now, she has come out to deny him. And I feel terribly bad for him. I think, for me, I think, the fact that the man has come out saying that apologies I have done, apologies over what I did, is enough for them to forgive him. Some of the courts, even in Spain, even though they see it as something bad, they've also seen it as something not too bad. I hope, I strongly believe that, he might come out of it. He might come out of it.
Definitely.
We know about the story of his mother. She had to go into under strike, just because of her son. That's the love of a mother, can't be compared to any other love.
Well, we hope that this will pan out in the next 3 months after FIFA's investigation. And, well, he's made a mistake, he said,
but it sure will send a very strong signal to coaches, to sports administrators who take advantage of women.
Well,
I want him to come out.
Advantage is now in quotes.
Yes, I want him to come out of it, but this will send a very strong message to coaches. We heard at the World Cup how Zambian coach, he has been accused one, and of course the second time, a big third time.
To be accused is one thing, but you have to. This thing has to be proven. I don't speak for the men, but it's not enough to say, okay, this is what is. You have been forced to do this and that.
Well, Cyril, let me just borrow one term from our local players. They say, now only man we didn't catch, 9 be thief.
I agree with you.
A lot of people are stealing.
Okay, well, let's get straight to Europe and bring you some more stories. Manchester United, we are told, has now named their 25-man squad for Champions League this season. And one man that has made that cut is Jadon Sancho. Remember him? Only at the weekend, he was accusing Eric Ten for not getting him on the list. And Ten said it has to do with his training. And
it has generated a lot of reactions from Sports Pundit text, Manchester United players and all of that. But, well, it's good. We disagree to agree.
You disagree to agree, and that's exactly what has happened in Manchester United because Sancho, who disagreed with his coach's opinion, has now been included in the Champions League squad for this season. And I think that will be good enough. And talking about Mason Greenwood, another Manchester United player, he's now having a new lease of life in Spain.
That's Getafe? A good one. Getafe, yeah, I saw it. And, of course, I saw the rousing welcome. But all of this welcome, I've not seen anyone like Harry Kane. What Bayern Munich did to welcome Harry Kane, I've not seen any like that. But then it was a good one. I'm happy for the young lad. He's a superstar.
Well, talking about Jadon Sancho and now missing Greenwood, all of Manchester United, I just hope that they can find, And
I hope he puts his head down. No more partying.
Well, he should have learned.
Partyless, yes.
He should have learned his lesson now because he's been in the cooler for some time for that, and I believe he will have learned his lesson as well. Meanwhile, former sporting director at Paris Saint-Germain, Leonardo, has admitted that Lionel Messi and Neymar, Kylian Mbappe as well, lack support and recognition to create a winning environment. What is really happening in Paris? Big name players not succeeding in Paris.
I don't know. They say when you have too many ingredients, you don't get, the right taste from the soup. I'm sure that's what happened to Paris Saint-Germain when they had, these big stars. They had, Kylian Mbappe. They had, apart from Leo Messi, Mbappe, and of course Neymar, they also had other big stars there. But just, I don't know. Probably not having the best of manager at the helm of affairs. I don't know. It was a season that we expected that having these big names, these superstars, they were going to conquer the Champions League, and it was unfortunately one of their earliest exits at the championship, at the UEFA Championship.
Well, that will be for this edition of the program. But just before we go, there has been a major casualty in coaching at the Spanish La Liga. Villarreal has sacked Queen Setién after what they call slow start to the season. This is the very first coach in the La Liga to
managerial casualty.
Yes.
Well, unfortunately, the season just started, and of course, you're not getting results. The earlier, the better. We'll definitely see more casualties even in the English Premier League. I pray. I have my mind on Wayne Rooney. On Vincent Kompany, and I pray that he gets to steer the ship very well with Burnley. Another team that might soon have a managerial casualty might just be Luton. These are teams struggling, but we just hope, especially my mind has been waiting.
They're just coming to the Premiership. They should learn their lessons and defeat.
What if they learn their lessons and then they return back to where they came from? Just at the end of the season. We've seen that happen to players. And for Luton, it is their first ever Premiership, season. They've never been in the English Premier League before. It's the first time, so it's a learning curve for them, but at the same time, I wish them all the best, that they maintain their Premiership status at the end of the season.
There will be more coming to your way at 6 p.m. Nigerian time on the program Sports Extraordinary, and when our focus will definitely be on the top European actions and how there have been casualties already. On today, remember, peace and unity are clearly pathways here on Atlantic Television Network.